এইটা একটা ডিজিটাল লাইব্রেরি তৈরি হচ্ছে। এই ডিজিটাল লাইব্রেরি করেছেন দুটো বিখ্যাত কলকাতার প্রফেসর, ডক্টর মধুচন্দ্রা সেন যাদবপুর ইউনিভার্সিটি থেকে আর ডক্টর নির্মাল্য চক্রবর্তী রবীন্দ্রভারতী ইউনিভার্সিটি থেকে। এরা দুজনে ফিলসফি দর্শন বিভাগের বিখ্যাত প্রফেসর হচ্ছে। আমরা কি করেছি, এই দর্শন মনীষা নামে এই ডিজিটাল লাইব্রেরিটা স্টার্ট করছি। এইটাতে আমরা নব্য ন্যায়ের উপরে, যেটা বেঙ্গলে 16th সেঞ্চুরিতে নদিয়া ডিস্ট্রিক্টে শুরু হয়েছিল, ওই ফিলসফির উপরে যত কাজ হয়েছে, ওর ম্যানুস্ক্রিপ্ট, বুকস, আর্টিকেলস, জার্নালস, ওইগুলোকে সব কালেক্ট করে আমরা এই ওয়েবসাইটের উপরে তুলে উঠবো, যেটার নাম হবে একটা ডিজিটাল লাইব্রেরি। এর জন্যে আমাদের পুরো মেটাডেটার সঙ্গে ওই বইয়ের ডিটেল, কে অথর, কখন পাবলিশ হয়েছিল, ওর ভেতরে কন্টেন্ট কী আছে, ওইগুলো সব অ্যাভেলেবেল থাকবে। পরে এই ওয়েবসাইটেতে কোর্সেসও থাকবে, লাইক ইন্ট্রোডাকশন টু ফিলসফি, ইন্ট্রোডাকশন টু নব্য ন্যায়া। এই ওয়েবসাইটের এইটা ডিজিটাল লাইব্রেরির এইটা পুরো অবজেক্টিভ হবে। এইটার উদ্দেশ্য হচ্ছে কি, ইন্ডিয়াতে আস্তে আস্তে অনেক পুরনো ফিলসফির বই আর লিপি সব ডিসঅ্যাপিয়ার হয়ে যাচ্ছে। আমাদের উদ্দেশ্য হচ্ছে এই ডিজিটাল লাইব্রেরিতে এইগুলোকে সংগ্রহণ করে রাখা, আর রিসার্চার অ্যারাউন্ড দ্য ওয়ার্ল্ড যে এই সাবজেক্টের উপর রিসার্চ করবে, যারা কলকাতায় আসতে পারবে না, বেঙ্গলে আসতে পারবে না, ওরা এই ডিজিটাল লাইব্রেরির মাধ্যমে ওই বইগুলো, ওই ম্যানুস্ক্রিপ্টগুলো, ওই লিপিগুলো, যেগুলো পাওয়া খুব মুশকিল, না তো ওদের অনেক লাইব্রেরিজে যেতে হবে, অনেক টোলে যেতে হবে, যেগুলো আর অ্যাভেলেবল নয়, ওইগুলো এখানে অ্যাভেলেবল হবে। আর ভক্তিবেদান্ত রিসার্চ সেন্টারের মেন কাজ হচ্ছে প্রিজার্ভ করা এমনি ম্যানুস্ক্রিপ্ট, আর আমাদের কাছে অলমোস্ট 2000-এর বেশি ম্যানুস্ক্রিপ্ট আছে। আমরা আস্তে আস্তে এই পুরনো লিপিগুলোদের এই ওয়েবসাইটে তুলব।
নমস্কার। On behalf of the Bhaktivedanta Research Center, Kolkata, and Professor Nirmalu Chakraborty and myself, I welcome you all to the launch of the Darshan Monisha Digital Library. We are extremely fortunate to have with us Professor Jonathan Ganeri, Professor Prabal Kumar Sen, Professor Sharad Deshpande on this occasion specially, and we are also extremely grateful to have some great luminaries in philosophy also amidst us, like Professor Mark Sideritz and our own Professor Gangadhar Kaur, Professor Rajana Mukherjee. I would like to request Professor Ganeri, Professor Sen, Professor Deshpande, Dr. Shumanto Rudra, and Professor Nirmalu Chakraborty to the dais. I now request Dr. Shumanto Rudra, Dean Academic Affairs of Bhaktivedanta Research Center, to deliver his welcome address.
Good afternoon, all the guests assembled today here. Thank you very much, Dr. Madhuchandra, to start this inauguration program. I welcome Professor Jonathan Ganeri, Professor Sharad Deshpande, and Professor Prabal Kumar Sen to this inauguration of the Darshan Manisha Digital Library. On behalf of Bhaktivedanta Research Center, it's a great honor for us to launch this digital library under the able guidance of Dr. Madhuchandra Sen and Dr. Nirmalu. This library was developed over a period of last 8 months or 1 year. We worked with a very famous Bangalore-based company called AU Solutions to develop this website. Bhaktivedanta Research Center is affiliated to Mumbai University for programs in PhD and MA by research in philosophy, and with the Savitri Bai Phule University for a PhD program. Our main objective of this Bhaktivedanta Research Center is to collect, preserve, research, disseminate this old Indian philosophical work which is available all over the India. So we are doing large number of collections of manuscripts, preserving them, digitizing them. We run almost 25 research projects both with international and Indian scholars of very high repute. We have large programs with Oxford Center for Hindu Study, National Philosophical Counseling, and several other institutes across the country and world on these kind of programs. We want to excel in our academic work in this area, and this is the first presentation of Bhaktivedanta Research Center to have a digital library, and we are extremely thankful to Professor Nirmala and Dr. Madhuchanda to put this together. And on this note, I'm looking forward to this program today. Thank you so much.
I would now request Professor Nirmalu Chakraborty to introduce the Digital Library Darshan Commission.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's indeed almost a dream come true for me to be able to serve with great humility the contribution made by the traditional scholars of Bengal who were academically trained and also taught in the indigenous education system known as Tols or Chatushpatis. For some time, I have been thinking of collecting some of the materials as far as available of the writings of these Pandits and preserving them and also deciphering the insights available in those works of the Pandits. And on one occasion, I was talking to Professor Shukanta Chaudhary, one of the most distinguished scholars of English language and literature, Professor Emeritus at Jadavpur University, about this plan. So he was kind enough to introduce me to Dr. Rudra here, and he advised me to sort out all the plans and programs with Bhaktivedanta Research Center. So immediately I got in touch with Dr. Rudra, and I must admit that immediately Bhaktivedanta Research Center, Kolkata, came up with all sorts of help, both in terms of human resources and in terms of financing, and that's how we started this digital library program. Now, of course, it's a long way to go. We have to work further. We are already. We have started working on the second phase of this digital library program. But then we have this, this wonderful coincidence that Professor Janardhan Kaderi will be in town to attend another seminar. So I thought that this would be the most befitting opportunity to have a small, gathering where we can, explain, we can share our ideas about this digital library program, focusing on the Pandits of Bengal. When we talk about the Pandits of Bengal, naturally, the first thing that comes to our mind is the Navanyaya philosophical tradition, which originated in Navadvip. So what we basically tried to do in this digital library program, to collect as far as possible the printed materials available, on the Navanyaya philosophers of Navadvip and the works of the Pandits, especially who were working during the 19th century in and around Kolkata. And another genre at the same time we thought to include in this digital library is what we refer to as contemporary Indian philosophers. Now, I think that because of various reasons, the works of these Pandits, since they are mostly in Bangla, some works are available in Sanskrit. Since they, were not trained in the English education system, I think that they really didn't get the kind of serious attention that they deserve from the academic community of India. It's really a great misfortune. At least that's what I feel. So I thought that, if we can collect as far as available all these materials and have a sort of bank of all these writings of these scholars, probably that would help the future researchers who might be interested in doing research on these Pandits. And also, for various reasons, I think that the contribution of the contemporary Indian philosophers also have not attracted the attention that they deserve because of various reasons. So we thought that in this digital library we would be focusing on the works of three genres of philosophical scholarship of India. One is, of course, the Navanyaya scholarship of Navadvip, and the second is the works of Pandits of especially 19th century kolkata, and these contemporary Indian philosophers. So we have started working digitizing all these works, and we are, at least for time being, we are focusing on the printed works. We are not taking into consideration the manuscripts, because as you all know that in order to deal with manuscripts we need some special skill which we right now we don't have. So we are focusing on the printed materials so far. And in this first stage, which I will show towards the end of this program, in the first stage we have digitized 151 books so far. That is, from Navanyaya scholarship of Navadvip, we have digitized 6,665 pages so far. And on the 20th century Pandits of Kolkata, we have digitized 15,802 pages. And insofar as philosophers of modern India are concerned, we have digitized 20,423 pages. So total number of pages we have digitized so far in last 6 or 7 months is 42,890 pages. And as any student of history of classical Indian philosophy is aware of, that the Navanyaya tradition in Navadvip could be said to start with the works of Raghunath Shiromani. And Raghunath Shiromani's time is, roughly speaking, 1460 to 1540. So this is where really the Navanyaya tradition started. And if for next 200 years, it's an amazing history of scholarship of Navanyaya. Unfortunately, it is not very well documented, well known to scholars. It's really the Navanyaya tradition flourished to such an extent that we have evidence to show, even after English education system was introduced in India in late 1800, we come across reports of the English education officers who were entrusted to look after the education system of Bengal at that time, reporting that there are hundreds of tolls of Chatushpatis on both sides of Ganga from Navadvip to Kolkata. Hundreds of scholarships, hundreds of tolls and Chatushpatis. And each of those tolls and Chatushpatis used to have, hundreds of scholars. And we have historical evidence to suggest that during the time of the peak of Navadvip scholarship in Navadvip, during 1400, 1500, people from Tamil Nadu used to come to Navadvip to study Navadvip. We have, the letters written by those students, telling their parents back in Tamil Nadu that these are the texts that they are, studying in Navadvip. So Navadvip was really one of the greatest centers of learning in 1400 and 1500 in India. And we have also evidences to suggest that when people from Navadvip used to travel to other places like Banaras, or in the south, they were held in high esteem because they had their Navadvip training in Navadvip. So such a glorious part of Bengal's intellectual history has remained ignored, unnoticed. So this is our humble effort, at least to preserve whatever is available to us through this digital library. And another point that I would like to draw your attention to is we are not confining ourselves just to digitizing. Digitization is definitely an important step in our plan, but we want to do something more. For example, and especially this is relevant especially for the students and researchers of classical Indian philosophy, we want to develop a software, and for that we might need help from the technical experts. We are planning to develop a software whereby you can trace the history of a certain concept in that tradition. For example, if some Nyaya scholar wants to see how the idea of Vyapti has been understood, reformulated, in the commentorial tradition of Navanyaya, we want to develop a software like that, which would really help facilitate the researcher of Navanyaya to do that kind of research. We have already, I shall show you one example of that later on. We have already at OCR, this is called, in technical terms, this is called OCR. We have already an OCR of English books. But unfortunately, it is difficult to develop OCR for the Devanagari, for the Sanskrit words, especially with the Devanagari scripts. But we are, planning. I hope in next few years we can develop that OCR for the Sanskrit text, thereby which would really, help a researcher, to see to trace the development of some of the key ideas of Navanyaya through the commentorial tradition. And I think this will really pave a way to further research on Navanyaya and also on the contribution of the Pandits, the traditional Pandits of Bengal. So this is our aim to develop an OCR for the Sanskrit texts. And actually one of the greatest scholar of the history of Navanyaya and Navadvip, Dinesh Chandra Bhattacharya, in his book he actually urged the scholars to trace this kind of what we call these days history of ideas. So how a particular concept has been developed, has been reformulated, has been refined along the different commentaries that we have in Navanyaya. So if we can at all develop that kind of OCR, and if we have interested researchers who can, through the employment of this OCR, can trace the development of ideas, I think Pandit Dinesh Chandra Bhattacharya's dream would come true. So, and this is all for our young students. I'm glad that many of them are here. So many of them are interested in doing research on classical Indian philosophy, on the tradition of, on the contribution of these Pandits. But unfortunately, none of these works are available. Some maybe are there in the personal collection. Some may be, lying, on the corner of some old libraries of Bengal. It's very difficult. I visited Navadvip once. I have to visit Navadvip again. Shantipur also was one of the main centers of this traditional scholarship. So we have to visit all these places, collect all these materials as far as possible. So this is, our humble effort to preserve, to disseminate the ideas that are available in this tradition of the Pandits, of course, of Navanyaya scholarship, and also in the Pandits of Kolkata. So and this is of course the first phase. So we hope with your inspiration, cooperation, and guidance, we hope that you would enrich this digital library. Also, we also had a conversation about this. We also plan to organize a series of online lectures on different aspects of Navanyaya. I remember today, just now it came to my mind, that Professor Vimal Krishna Matilal, who was one of the greatest Navanyaya scholars in recent times, actually dreamt of having a center of Navanyaya scholarship in Kolkata, where young researchers would come and join and enrich this Navanyaya scholarship. So I don't know whether Professor Matilal's dream would come true, but let us see. Let us try our best to facilitate further research in these areas. So I'm again extremely happy to have Professor Janardhan Ganeri with us today. He has kindly agreed to be with us in this humble effort on our behalf to preserve and to disseminate the contribution of the Pandits of Bengal, including the Navanyaya scholarship. And we are also very happy to have Professor Sharad Deshpande with us today, because it was from Professor Deshpande I got the inspiration to work on whom we refer to as contemporary Indian philosophers. He has worked on this genre of philosophers, and I think there is much work to be done in this area as well. Just this morning I was talking to one of my young friends. How many of us do know that there was a philosopher in Utkal University called Ganeshwar Mishra, who was a student of A.J. Ayer in Oxford, and who came back and who interpreted the Advaita Vedanta Mahavakya statements in terms of philosophy of language that was available in those days in Oxford. Nobody knows. Nobody seems to be aware of these enormous contribution that these contemporary Indian philosophers did. So we also have I will show you one or two examples of that. We have been able to collect some of these works. So and also, of course, I mean, Professor Prabal Sen does not need any introduction. It is through many conversations that I had with him. Even last month, I had conversation with him. He was telling me all these wonderful works that the Pandits of Bengal wrote at some time, and unfortunately much of them has been lost forever. So whatever little is available, that's something we would like to show, and we would like to inspire the future generation to come forward and to do more research on these philosophers. So with this words, I convey my sincere thanks, regards to all the scholars who are there today. I also, appeal to everybody if they have any works of these pandits in their personal collection, if they can lend us for a month or so, we will digitize them, and we will of course return those books to those original owners. So through you, I appeal to everybody who might be having this kind of collection, because often a lot of people have some of these works in their personal collection. So we would be very happy to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nimalu. It is our great privilege to have Professor Jonathan Ganeri, who really needs no introduction at all, but still I would give a brief introduction of Jonathan. Jonathan Ganeri is the B.K. Motilal Distinguished Professor of Philosophy, University of Toronto. Professor Ganeri is one of the most distinguished experts in Indian philosophy and one of the most prolific writers of our time. One of his earliest works was Semantic Powers, Testimony and the Theory of Meaning, which was on Gadadhara's Shaktivada. In his book, The Lost Age of Reason, and in many of his other works, Professor Ganeri has tried to show that modernity in the classical Indian context started with Raghunath Shiromani, who was the central figure in Navadvip Nobodai scholarship. Professor Ganeri is the author of Philosophy in Classical India, Artha, The Concealed Art of the Soul, The Self, Attention Not Self, Inwardness, and Outsider's Guide, to mention only a few. And we can think of no better person to inaugurate our digital library, Darshana Manisha, because initially we had started with the idea of digitizing the works of Nobunai scholars from Navadvip. I now request Professor Ganeri to launch the library with the help of our able friends there.
Touched on the three topics that I wanted to say something about, which are to do with preservation, access, and history of philosophy. In terms of preservation, I think it's quite obvious that the digitalization of the private libraries of the Pandits is work that's of the highest priority. Often these libraries are in a very fragile condition and are subject to degradation, and that's certainly true of the manuscript libraries, but also of printed books. They're often these books were published by very small presses in very small print runs, and very, very few copies, even of printed books, survive to this day. So there's no more important task really than the digitalization of the private libraries of the Pandits, and hopefully, this Darshana Manisha will provide a kind of a platform, and as Nirmala said in his opening remarks, it can that one's still on. It can encourage other pundits to share their private libraries and have them digitalised, and that's an absolutely essential task. As far as access is concerned, well, I was given a sneak preview of the spreadsheets of the works that have already been digitalised, and just as a kind of a very unscientific experiment, I checked my own library at the University of Toronto, and well less than half of the books already in this library are available in the University of Toronto system. So it's already making available a vast treasure trove of books that simply aren't available to scholars of Navanya. Absolutely valuable. I mean, I just quickly looking through myself, I noticed that there were several books to do with the history of Navanya in Bengal, which I certainly have not been able to have access to before. So extremely valuable in terms of access, both here in Kolkata and to the international community. Now, the third thing I wanted to talk about was as Nirmala said, most of these books concern Navya Nyaya and the tradition of Navya Nyaya in Bengal. And I wanted to say a few words about why that is such an important episode in the global history of philosophy. Let me say a few words about why this was such an important period, and the philosophical insights and discoveries of these philosophers are still an absolutely treasure trove of philosophical innovation and ideas. As they become better known, they will revolutionise contemporary philosophical practice. Quite sure of it. So let me say a few words about the historical context of the works that have been collected into this digital library. So with the decline of Buddhist influence in subcontinental India, a new era of philosophy commences in India, now hallmarked by a spirit of uncertainty and questioning. It was a time of intellectual turbulence, as philosophers increasingly doubted the foundations of the structures they'd done so much to construct and defend. The whole sutra, bhashya, darshanas. With the Buddhists less available to provide a foil, philosophers of various persuasions began to question themselves and to interrogate each other, while Jaina philosophers assumed, if anything, an even greater significance. I'm actually inclined to describe the period that I'm talking about, from the 9th or 10th to the 13th or 14th century, as an age of disquiet, age of uncertainty and questioning. Some of its greatest figures come from Kashmir, including Shaiva thinkers like Utpaladeva and Abhinavagupta, the Nyaya genius Jayantabhatta, and possibly also the transformative Charvaka Bhutbhatta. If Jayarashi had announced himself to be a lion come to upturn every philosophical cart, and Vasishta had declared the world to be nothing but imaginary emergence, matters came to a head with a revolutionary critique of the fundamentals of epistemology provided by Sri Harsha. His 12th century classic, Khandana is a brilliant takedown of the definition-mongering philosophical activities of past generations of thinkers. Sri Harsha attempts to demonstrate that a philosophical method based on the search for definitions is misguided, indeed even incoherent. He developed a rival method, a method of refutation, to expose the vacuity of doing a way of doing philosophy that had become de rigueur with Dignaga. His new method required him to reconstruct the best possible version of any definition, not merely the best one actually formulated, and his ability to articulate philosophical positions with greater insight, accuracy, and acuity than their own proponents is really quite astonishing. This, though, was perhaps also his Achilles' heel, insofar as his reconstructions afforded great assistance to those he sought to refute. Now, when Gangesha intervenes in the 14th century, he's responding to a variety of pressures which are eternal to the Sanskrit world, critiques that have been gathering force for some time. One came from the direction of the rival Mimamsaka philosophical theory about the nature of inquiry, developed within a context of defense of the legitimacy and authority of Vedic knowledge. If the Vedas are authoritative, then there is no question about the truths of the beliefs we form from them, and no further project of verification. Such an attitude towards inquiry is profoundly at odds with one which sees the truth as a matter of discovery and confirmation. The other challenge came from a challenge to the pluralist metaphysics of common sense, and found its most severe articulation in analytic thinkers who sought to undermine the principle that appearance is trustworthy, and in particular that there's a world populated by middle-sized objects and known to a plurality of distinct cognizers. Gangesha's brilliant response in a book that claims itself to be the jewel which fulfills the wish for truth, the Tattva Chintamani, was to re-equip the philosopher's analytical arsenal. And his new conceptual methodologies rapidly gained currency throughout Sanskritic intellectual space, spreading to disciplines other than philosophy and to regions including the south, where they secured much admiration, but also admonishment from the Madhva thinkers Jayatirtha and Vyasatirtha. A distinctive form of early modernity began to emerge in the 16th century, occasioned in part by new overlappings of the Persian cosmopolis with exposure to new paradigms of thinking. Sanskrit philosophers subconsciously set out to innovate, to think with the old structures but not to defer to them. An astonishingly vast number of works in Sanskrit exists from this enormously rich period, today lying unedited and sometimes in a single copy in manuscript libraries. It's exactly the reason we're launching this one today. In the writings of those philosophers who followed Raghunath Shiromani from around the middle of the 16th century until the middle of the 18th century, there is a metamorphosis in epistemology, metaphysics, semantics, and philosophical logic. The works of these philosophers, many of whom lived in Raghunatha's hometown of Navadvipa, are full of phrases that are indicative of a newly open and exploratory attitude. Phrases like, this should be considered further, this needs to be reflected on. So an openness to inquiry into the problems themselves is what drives the new work, not merely a new exegesis of the ancient texts, along with the sense that they're engaged in an ongoing project. There was a second group based around Varanasi, there was another group based in Mithila, but it was the group in Navadvip based on the work of Raghunatha, which I personally believe to be the most innovative and the most dynamic and creative. So that hopefully gives you some indication of why these texts are so important, why they need not just to be preserved, but to be made accessible, to be studied, and to be studied not simply as an episode in the history of philosophy, but also as conversation partners in creative, contemporary, philosophical theorising. So with those brief remarks, I'm again very happy to be part of the inauguration of the Darshana Manishna Library. Thank you.
We are extremely fortunate to have Professor Probal Kumar Sen with us. I remember when I was a student of philosophy, or even earlier, before I began to become a student of philosophy, Professor Sen sort of embodied Nyaya scholarship. And I remember how fondly my father used to call him Probal Pandit. So no one else could really set off this digital library better than Probalda. Professor Sen was a professor of philosophy at Calcutta University and is an eminent expert on different schools of Indian philosophy and has taught and molded 3 generations of philosophers in Kolkata. His works include the Bengali translation and explanation of Jayanta Bhatta's Nyaya Manjari and his works on Nyaya Rahasya, Akhatavada, Vyakha, Mokshavada by Rambhadra Sarvabhauma and Annikshiki Tattva Vivarana by Janakanath Chudamani are worth mentioning. I request him to share with us his deep and long engagement with the works of the Navanayiks of Navadvip and the Pandits of Bengal. Is this what?
A very good afternoon to all of you. I'm very happy to be present on this occasion when Nirmal, along with the authorities of Bhaktivedanta Institute, have started a very laudable enterprise. Because as far as I know, thousands of manuscripts of Nambannaya are gradually perishing. There are no proper care is being taken of them. Many of them are in palm leaf and so liable to be destroyed by insects. Those that were made on handmade paper are better in that respect, because I came to know from my teachers like Madhusudana Acharya that handmade paper in those days in India, especially Navadvip, were of a very bright yellow color. And this color came from a substance known as horital, which is an arsenic compound. And being a metallic compound, it won't deteriorate with time. Unlike herbal materials, it is poisonous. So insects cannot go through them. That was one thing. Then they made it a point to leave long, it's a margins on all 4 sides. So that even if you see mice or rats try to read them. They were bound very tightly. So they won't go up to the writing. So that was a Bharitha would not kill mice, but at least the writing would be retained. Another thing was, I still have, you see, I have still with me, I collect a manuscript between 1540 Shatabdi, which is roughly of the time of Jahangir. And I can, if I brought it to you, I could have shown you, but I can roll the leaves, it will spin back, without breath. Moreover, the ink that was used was indelible. It had to be, you see, dried for one whole day. That was the rule. And if it somehow became a bit faded, there was a technique of making writing bright. You see, tamarind seeds have a white substance inside them. So they would make a thin preparation out of them, a liquid preparation out of them, and apply it on those leaves. The writing would again become bright. So they tried their level best to make the manuscripts long-lasting and useful. But we, in our stupidity, have, you see, literally thrown them away. In many households of the Pandits, when the study of Sanskrit became gradually out of fashion or wasn't economically very productive, most of these Brahmins turned into priests and other things, and often threw these things away, mostly in the Ganges. So what can be said about it? I will say one or two incidents and then come down to what I have to say. You see, my interest in Navadaya was due to this fact that my maternal uncles were traditionally Ayurvedic practitioners, Vaidyas, who had to study Sanskrit. And they were from a village very near Navadvip. And their spiritual mentor or Diksha Guru happened to be the greatest Nayayika of Navadvip at that time, Muhammad Rajkrishna Davajan. And he was a descendant of Ram Sagu. Now it so happened that in the house of my maternal uncles, Durga Puja and Jagadhatri, Ali Puja and Jagadhatri Puja used to be held. And on those occasions, some member of this family would have to be invited as Diksha Guru and Purohit so that they could conduct these rituals. But being Diksha Gurus, they would not come of their own. So the disciples had to go to their home and give them with honor to their home. So it so happened that one of my uncles, whom I did not have the good fortune to meet, he died very prematurely. He was sent to Navadvip for bringing them to Calcutta. And it was quite late when he reached Navadvip. He had to stay overnight and then start again in the morning. And he just went to ask a humorous little wife of the Gurudev at the time, that what is being cooked for us. And he was almost flabbergasted to see that the leaves of the manuscripts was being used as fuel. He said, what is happening here? He said, we don't have any fire for the last 3 weeks, so what can we do? These are of no use to us. He said, we should at least related to us. For heaven's sake, I am contributing 6 months of work. Give these manuscripts to me. So he came back with a load of manuscripts. He found that there were 3 large, we call them sindhus, these large chests, almost up to the roof of the house. And 2 of them were empty. The second one had about half of it filled with manuscripts. So he brought back those things. But as bad luck would have it, he died very soon thereafter. He started to catalogue them because even though I have not seen them, I know their handwriting from their books. Then the second brother started this work. As had nothing happened, he also died. So he began to say that these are inauspicious things, could not be touched. But being the property of the Gurudev's house, they could not be thrown away. They were lying in that iron trunk. When I came to hear of this, I said, well, I am not of this family. So why not let me see what is in it after all? And I'll tell you, after opening it, I also, on the first day, I also had a bad throat affection because it was full of dust for all these years. It was collecting dust for about 50 or 60 years. So somehow I again went thereafter, I learned a bit better. The first manuscript, very thick, about 300 pages, that was a totally unknown, an unpublished commentary of Uttranatha Tarkavadi on Anuvada Vidhi. And I will tell you one thing, how much can be known from these manuscripts. As I went through it, I found that this manuscript was, you see, what is called bandhak. That when you take some loan, you give as guarantee. So 6 manuscripts were given out as guarantee for a sum of, you see, 6 rupees at that time. The date was 1640 Shatabdi. And the rate of interest was very high. One Pandit is lending money to another Pandit. And the rate of interest is about 120%. You see, with 1 rupee at that time, it was 16 annas and 64 paise. And this paise, and in Bengal it was Tonkapati, Mahaputi, Chayuri Kuriya. So that means, you see, 6 paise every month for 1 rupee. So that is 6 times 12 will be 72. So 72 paise for 1 rupee, which is 64 rupees. So after some time, it was repaid and the deed of carriage was cancelled. And there were three witnesses. This are 3 witnesses, after the factory. So this happened twice. On the third occasion, the manuscript was sold. It could not be, you see. So that was the history, what was going on. But one thing was interesting, that like things like, you see, utensils or other things or ornaments should be deposited for taking loan. So that's the thing. And from that time onwards, I showed some of these manuscripts to my teachers, like Dr. Bhattacharya and Dr. Shastri. And they said that instead of doing what usually these people do for their PhD, go through 15 to 20 books, copy from them and put them down, why don't you try to edit these things? That would be something worthwhile. So that's how I started to go through these manuscripts and try to decipher them and edit them. Anyway, my experience has not been a very happy one. I have not received much good in this area. Anyway, I am happy that I could have at least done something. Anyway, let me turn to what the business is at hand. Marga had asked me to say something about the scholars of the 19th and 20th century who have Nagoya, and I think Indian philosophy in general, that would be more helpful. I have links here. I'm just reading out the names and the works. If Nirmala needs, I can give him a fair copy after a few weeks. How much time do I have? No, you see, short has to speak here. So I should not encroach on that time. Okay. I'll start by disagreeing with Nirmala and discard on two issues. One is that the important areas where India has contributed significantly to the intellectual heritage of the world is said to be philosophy, religion and literature. I think some other very significant things have been left out. Why not statecraft? You see, if Leviathan of Hobbes or Prince by Machiavelli can be part of world heritage, why not Arthashastra? Why not works on medicine? If Galen or Hippocrates, they are parts of culture, why not Shudra and Jonathan? And I think one very important omission, so far as intellectual work is concerned, abstractly, is grammar. And especially in Bengal, where it differed from the rest of India, I think was, that in most of the other provinces, we find the Pan-Indian grammar that was being studied. But maybe here, due to some Buddhist influence or other, I don't know what, non-Pan-Indian grammars were more in vogue, like Buddha or Palapa or Saraswata or Sankirtasha. And lots of commentaries and sub-commentaries were written on them. And one another area I think should be mentioned specifically, even though literature has been mentioned here. But I think there were some works like say Natya Shastra or other works of dramaturgy like Abhinaya Hasta Muftawali. They are not strictly works of literature, but they pertain to performing arts. Or take the works of Shilpa Shastra, like works on architecture or iconography. Even though you could say that they ultimately could be related to religion. But I think these are disciplines in their own right. So, I don't know whether this institute will take interest in these things also subsequently. But there are also interesting areas where a lot of work needs to be done. So one more thing where I like to correct Nirmala is he said that Navadvip, the tradition of Nagoya started with Raghunath Shiromani. This is not quite correct. Because the teacher of Raghunath Shiromani was Bhaktivedanta Sadhguru, who had a commentary on Tattva Chintamani. And his father, Narahari Vishadada, also had some commentary on Tattva Chintamani. So we could say that, and there was one senior contemporary, at least one senior contemporary at that time, he was Janakinath Chudam, who was slightly senior to Raghunath, at least according to the rest of the Bhattacharya. And there was also another scholar whose views have been noted by Dr. Shiromani in his commentary on Vidiki, in the Vedikarma section. It is Srinath Acharya Chakravarti. He was still smart girl, but it transpires that he also knew something on these things. Also Shuddhapan. Even a smart girl, his view on Jati and Nikrosthana had been noted by Janakinath in his commentary on that. So it would be a bit wrong to say that it started with Raghunatha. Of course, Raghunatha was a towering figure. After his work came into at least 52 others people have commented on his works. So let me stop there. But now let me at least mention the names of the scholars and give you some idea of their works that they did. And before I start this list, I will take my cue from one of the statements of Janardhan, where he mentioned the importance of works like Khandana Khanda Kadya and other things. It pains me to say that a man like Vishwachandra Vidyasagar, when he became the principal of the Sanskrit College, he summarily removed this work from the course of his life. I don't know why. Another book that he dismissed almost with derision was Atmatattvavivek. So I really can't appreciate his philosophical talents. I think he had no taste for philosophy at all. A man who could do that and give a completely wrong account of Atmatattvavivek, it is the muddy metaphysics dealing with God. I don't know. He may have been a great scholar of Sanskrit literature and language, but proficiency in language doesn't give you automatic proficiency in other branches of learning in that language. For example, a great scholar of Kavya may have no entry into Ayurvedic texts, simply because they are written in Sanskrit. But you see, since he was there as the principal, almost all powerful, and he wrote some very derogatory stories about Nyaya Pandits. I'll give you one or two examples of them. And they become almost, and people took his words to be gospel truth. That these Pandits were totally, they had no practical sense, or they were simply worthless fellows. Let me take two stories. One of the stories was this, that the wife of one of these Pandits told him that go and bring some oil from the market. In those days there was no market in that sense. There was people who used to make oil from oil seeds. They were called kolu or teli. So he went there and found that there was a grinding machine run by a bullock which would yield the oil from mustard seeds and other things. He had never been to this place before. So he asked that, well, how is this working? He said, you see, the bullock goes around, so that moves this thing, and with this pressure, oil is coming out. So, very interesting. Achha, you do not remain here all the time. How do you know that the bullock is still going around? He said, yes, sir, there is one very good way. I have put a bell on his neck. So if he stops and the sound is slow, I just come and twist his tail. It again goes around. Oh, it's so nice of you. And he took the oil and started going home. Then after a few days he came back. Look here. What happens if the bullock stands and shakes his head? What would happen then? The man was reached and said, here, sir, this bull has not started studying then. That's what never happened. So this was one story. Another story goes like this. That the wife of Pandit told him that, look, I am going to the pond to bring some water. This dal or pulses, I have on the stove, in the kitchen it is boiling. Just see that it does not spill over. That poor fellow had never been to the kitchen before. So he was there, and after some time it was swelling and coming out of the cauldron. He didn't quite know what to do. He studied for some time, but it was again going on. So finally he put his thread on his hand and began to utter the Gayatri Mantra. But it was not working. So after some time, by that time his wife had come back. So what are you doing? Couldn't you put a little oil in it? And after she put a spoonful of oil in the boiling mass, it went down. And he folded his hands and said, you must be goddess herself in my house. Even Gayatri Mantra could not be done. How could you do this? You see, it's very, very funny stories. But they do not put these politics in a very favorable light. And as happened afterwards, one of our greatest forerunners in scientific studies, Ashdeo Prafullo Rai, was the father of Indian chemistry here. He wrote a book called Bangali Mastishker Apochoy, the wastage of the brain of the Bengalis. And for him it was just a wastage of time and nothing else. Useless person. So you see, so the public perception about these such studies, it was very bad. The public impression was very bad. Finally, I'll just add one more thing. Those who are acquainted with the works of Sukumar Rai, the father of Satyajit Rai, you see, he's a great man. I admire most of his works. But unfortunately, he has one skit called Jhalapana, where there is this peculiar character of a Pandit. And he puts almost anything in Nyaya Shastra. For example, Ushnattam Ajnataka Samprayogat. This is in Nyaya Shastra. Then Ahut Tadbhave Chi. This is also in Nyaya Shastra. Which obviously is not the case. But anyway, so this, what does they say that this public indifference, or even what should I say, somehow hostility towards these studies was inculcated by these illustrious people, which is very unfortunate. Anyway, let that go. We cannot undo it. So I will just start with the names of the scholars and their works. There may be a few omissions. Let me see. If you contact me some later, I can give you one of the books called Mahopadhyayas of Bengal. You have that. Okay. So that would give you some clue about many of these scholars and their works. So I start with Taranath Tarka Vachaspati, who was the senior contemporary of Vidyasagar and also a professor at Sanskrit College at that time. So we find that he had written some works on semantics like Shabdartha Tattva, then some grammatical works which have also some philosophical bearings like on Samasa and Karaka. And also, surprisingly for people of that time, when Advaita Vedanta was not studied so much here, a commentary on Siddhartha Bindu of Madhusudana Saraswati. So the next name is Maheshwaran Nayaratna, who became the principal of Sanskrit College after Vidyasagar. And his works, one of the book was a brief notes on technical terms of Navadvaya. A small book but very important work, which has been recently reprinted under the name Navadvaya Bhasha. Incidentally, he also wrote a very good commentary on Kampa Prakasha of Navadvaya. The next name is Chandrakanta Tarkalankar. His works were on Vaisheshika Bhashya. He wrote an independent commentary on Vaisheshika Sutras. Then Kusumanjali Haridasi Vyakhyam. And in Bengali, very lucid Bengali, he gave some lectures in Bengali on some philosophical systems. They were called fellowship lectures. that in Calcutta University, Sri Gopal Basu Mallik family had instituted a fellowship lecture, and so that was this work. Then another man, Jayanaran Panchanan, who was a teacher of Ishwara Vidyasana. He wrote independently commentaries, new commentaries or vrittis on Nyaya Sutras and Vaisheshika Sutras, and had also edited the first, he was the first editor of Nyaya Bhashya that came out from Ishwara Society. The next name would be Kalivar Vedanta Bagish. He mostly translated works like Vedanta Sara, Brahmasutra Shankar Bhashya and so on. Then Durgacharna Sankha Vedanta Tirtha, he was almost, he did almost the impossible thing, translating along with Shankara Bhashya all the principal Upanishads, then Brahmasutra Shankara Bhashya, then Sri Bhashya Ramanuja and Bhakti Rasayana. The next name I take is Vishwanath Panchanana. He wrote commentaries on Vedanta Paribhasha, then Sankhadotta Kaudi and Mimamsa Nyaya Prakash. The next name would be Hannatha Tarka Siddhanta, who wrote a commentary on Shaktivada and Gadadhara. And his student Ashutosh Tarkabhushan wrote along with him a Bengali translation of Nyaya Sutra and Nyaya Bhashya. Very surprisingly, coming from Tarka Bagish, they were understood. I don't know why. The next name would be Rakhaldas Nayaratna of Bhattapalli. His works are Tattva Sara, then Didhitikrin Nunata Vichara, Baladhara Nunata Vichara, Advaita Khanda. And here I think was something new was being done. That this person was trying to find, you see, lacuna in the works of scholars like Raghunatha Shiromani and Baladhara Bhattacharya. Nunata would mean some lack or fault. So his nephew, Ramachandra Prabhushan is the next name for me. He translated a lot of works like Bhagavad Gita with Shankar Bhashya, then Vivarana Pramaya Sangraha, then Brahmasutra Shankara Bhashya Chatusutri with Bhamati, and he wrote two other books in Bengali, very lucid Bengali, Bongan Vaishnava Darshan and Mayavada. The next name would be Panchanana Tarkarupna, the brother-in-law of Prabhupada. He wrote a supplementary Pariskara on Vaisheshika Sutra Pariskara of Shankara Mishra, then Purnima, another supplementary on Sankaratta Kaumudi of Vachaspati Mishra, and he translated also a large number of Puranas and other texts. Then Manibhushan Tarkavagisha, he is quite well known. One of his book on Nyaya was Nyaya Parichaya, and he was a Namatua, 5-volume translation of Nyaya Bhashya in Bengali elucidation. The next name would be Yogendranath Dr. Sankhavedanta Tirtha. He was almost a polymath, working in so many areas, mainly Vedanta, but also he was also a very good scholar of Nyaya Mimamsa. So his first work was the commentary Balamodhini, with Bengali translation on the first portion of Advaita Siddhi, the Vitthatta Siddhi portion. Then he wrote Bengali poetry works like Prachin Bharata Dandamiti, Vedar Mantra Bhave Ishwar, then one book on Pramannavada according to early Nyaya Mimamsa, then Vakkatha Nirupana Darshanik Paddhati, philosophical methods for determining what sentence meaning, then Bharatiya Darshan Shastra Sambandha, how could he somehow believed along with his teacher Lakshman Shastri Dravid that all paths lead to Advaita Vedanta. That is Sambandha. He believed in this Sopan and Nyaya. Then you start with Nyaya, then you go to Sankhya, then you go to Vedanta. That way. And he also wrote some books on the characters in Mahabharata, like Vinur and Kunti. And the last one that came out, I think, was Bharatiya Shastra Sahitya Advaitavada. The doctrine of Advaitavada in different Shastras and literature. His classmate, his study was Ramachandra Sarkasanta Vedanta Tirtha. He also wrote some commentaries on, like the commentary like Gunamani on Sankattukomudi and somewhat some Mimamsa also. Then Gudananda Bhakta Tirtha, a student of Jagannath, he translated the Mimamsa Sutras with almost a Bengali summary of the Shravana Bhashya. Huge work in 2 volumes. Then Bengali translation of Gita Gurhatma Deepika of Madhuram Saraswati. And another important work by him, though not in Naya, was the Bengali translation of Menadithi's commentary on another important man was Dayala Krishna Tattvatirtha of Sylhet. I found only 1 volume of his work in Footpath. He put in Bengali almost a summary of the whole Tattvatirtha, chapter wise. Coming to later times, I have to mention, so Anantakumar Nayakarpatirtha was another very eminent Nayayika, also a teacher of Professor Motilal. So he is Vaibhashika Darshana, a work on Vaibhashika Buddhism in Bengali, and he also wrote some commentaries on small tracts organized by Harirama Tattva. Hariram, he was the Guru of Gadadhara Bhattacharya. Then we have another man, he also translated some important words like Purushottamada Bhashya and others. Then 2 other teachers of Professor Motilal who also happened to be my teachers, Madhusudan Nayacharya and Shobhu Tattvatirtha. Madhusudan Nayacharya had translated Shabda Shakti Prakashika, Panatattva Nirupana, and also written a Sanskrit commentary on Akshata Jagadishi. Then Vishabandhu Tattvatirtha also translated some portions of Bhakti Chintamani and had written quite a few important articles. Then Narayana Chandra Goswami, he translated and commented on in Bengali on Dr. Sankaru and Sankattukomudi. Then Dinesh Chandra Shastri, his works are on Indian psychology. He also wrote in Bengali a book on Yogadarshana and translated into Bengali the Sambandha Bharti, the initial portion of Vedartha Bhashya of Krishna. And now here I mentioned 3 or 4 others who were teachers in the university and had also Sanskrit training. One is Kokileshwara Shastri, who was a professor of Sanskrit at Calcutta University. And he had tried to interpret Advaita Vedanta in a slightly different way. It was not very popular. He was, I think, master criticism, but that was it. He was trying to do it in his own way. Another person was Vidushabara Shastri, whose work on Gaurapada, Anma Shastra Gaurapada. He was trying to show that there was some affinity between Buddhism and Gaudapada, and that also was not very well with the Orthodox scholars. Pashupatinath Shastri was one who wrote a small book on Mimamsa, Guru Mimamsa, and Adhutusha Shastri, who wrote in Bengali a very little work, 2 volumes on Advaita. I think there may be some options here and there. I have to look up, but so what do you show?
Professor Sharad Deshpande is the former professor of philosophy at Savitri Bai Phule Pune University, former Tagore Fellow, Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla, and presently National Fellow at Indian Council of Philosophical Research. Professor Deshpande has been engaged in exploring the contribution of philosophers in colonial India, and his edited book, Philosophy in Colonial India, is a groundbreaking anthology in the area and has inspired many of us to look at the works of philosophers who wrote in this period. He has also edited a volume on the philosophy of G.R. Malkani, a modern-day Advaita thinker. I would request Professor Deshpande to share his thoughts on the modern Indian philosophers.
Well, first of all, I very heartily congratulate Bhaktivedanta Research Center and Nirmalya and Madhuchanda for initiating and completing a certain part of this project of digitizing the important Nyaya texts. I am particularly very happy because this kind of exercise I have also done. I have digitized 34 years of Indian Philosophical Quarterly, all issues, per year 4 issues, each issue on an average 150 pages. So, of 34 years, quantum has been digitized, and that is available on Google. Similarly, we run another journal in Marathi devoted to philosophy, and that 27 years of back issues of those journals have been digitized. So I know the importance of this work of digitizing the ancient texts as well as the contemporary texts. Now, one point which Prabhupada made, he said that Pandits were ridiculed. The question is, it's not, we have to look at this phenomenon of why Pandits, and thereby what is meant by the traditional Indian knowledge, or traditional, those who pursued Indian knowledge systems, why were they ridiculed? Why did they become a lot of ridicule? I will relate this to a larger issue, and that larger issue is that with the introduction of the British education system in India, this entire corpus of traditional knowledge and the entire population who pursued this knowledge, they suddenly, or say gradually, if not suddenly, became irrelevant. I'll just give another example. In Pune, we have this famous Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. Now, this institute is, it came into existence in the name of the great Orientalist R.G. Bhandarkar, that everyone knows. Now, in his first presidential address, he says, he advises the Pandits to give up the traditional way of reading and learning this, and the Pandits should follow Western methods of research. Now, this is as comparable to those who have ridiculed Pandits in the story which Prabhupada has said. Now, this is very significant, and it is in this context that we have to see now the relevance of this kind of activity. But again, I will say a few things and then I will go back to the to something else which I thought I would say on this occasion. Now my simple question is that for whom these digitization projects are being carried out? Who are the takers? See, I see all these young friends in front of me. Is any of these texts or majority of texts form the part of their syllabus? Do their MA and PhD programs will draw something from this digitization project? That is the point. That is, so what was at the beginning of, say, 18th century or late 18th century, the same situation continues even now. And in fact, now it has become worse. This is my point, and I am all for the digitization project. I have said that. That's what I said, that I have myself done this. I know its value otherwise. But in India, who is going to get a benefit out of this? Where is the audience for this kind of work? Who are the readers? Who are going to work, as Prabhupada said, for their PhD work, taking something from this digitized text and do his or her research? Hardly one in 100 or hardly one in 1000 maybe. So this is, we all have to ponder over this. That is one thing. Now, Nirmalya has told me that I should say something about contemporary Indian philosophy. Now, let us look at the word contemporary. Now, what is the history of the word contemporary attached to Indian philosophy? And when did we started using this phrase, contemporary Indian philosophy? What was the documentation of contemporary Indian philosophy? Now, if we raise this question, then we go back to, and this afternoon I have prepared a list of anthologies which carry this title, Contemporary Indian Philosophy. So I think this will be of some use to at least our young friends. The first and foremost that comes to my mind is that classic 1952 anthology whose editors were Radhakrishnan and Murgay, titled Contemporary Indian Philosophy. And it enlists around 30 contemporary philosophers at that point of time who have written articles for that anthology. And it begins with it's not exactly a message, not an article in the traditional, in the academic sense of the term, but a piece of writing by Gandhi, followed by Tagore, and then all philosophers at that point of time who were teaching in Indian, in colleges or in the universities. So here we get one marker for this, namely the term contemporary Indian philosophy refers to the class of, refers to the writings of the class of philosophers who were university teachers or who were part of British education system. That is what I would like to put. But that volume also, as I said, consisted of these two articles, Tagore and Gandhi. They were not professors, they were not teachers anywhere in any college or institute. So contemporary Indian philosophy, this also applies to I thought something is being said. So, contemporary Indian philosophy, this phrase also applies to the writings of, say, Tagore, Aurobindo, then Ramana Maharshi, then Gandhi, then Vivekananda. So, these writings of these people also come under the title contemporary Indian philosophy. So, we get this first division of professional, you might say, and outside the professional circle. So, now coming to this list, this 1952 volume, and that volume I think is still, it has some excellent points about it. One of them is that every contributor gives his, a sort of his philosophical journey at the beginning of his article. So we come to know what was the academic or intellectual atmosphere in which that particular philosopher has grown, what were his interests, how they were shaped, and so on and so forth. So each article is preceded by this kind of autobiographical sketch, which is the real beauty of that anthology. Then and that was I think that was first published by George Allen and Unwin, and in that series the second volume came around 40 or 50 years after, and that was edited by Margaret Chatterjee, which covers articles by again university professors during 70s and 80s. That is roughly the period. So the title, Contemporary Indian Philosophy, these two. Then now I'll just read the names of the editors or the authors. One Basant Kumar Lal, B.K. Lal. Then one R.N. Sharma. Then a duo, Hrudaynath Behera and Jaydev Jaina. Then there is one Desraj Sirwal. So all these are with the same title, Contemporary Indian Philosophy. Then there is slight variation to this. That variation is by one Ravindra Kumar Sinha, and the title of his anthology which he has prepared is Human Destiny in Contemporary Indian Philosophy. Okay. Then there is one Dr. Aditi. I don't know who this Dr. Aditi is, but her book is Humanistic Trends in Contemporary Indian Philosophy. Then he mentioned my name, Philosophy in Colonial India. Then Nalini Bhushan and Garfield, their books, two books, Indian Philosophy in English, from Renaissance to Independence, and then Minds Without Fear. And then the one which I saw last month was by Daniel Rave, which is Making of Contemporary Indian Philosophy, which is basically a work on K.C. Bhattacharya, one single author. And now there is another set of anthologies and volumes which are available. One is, now the latest is Nirmala's book on Kalidas Babu. Then my book which was mentioned. Then ICPR, all of you know, has brought out a series of such anthologies, under the title Philosophy of So and So. So this will also go in the corpus of what may be called Contemporary Indian Philosophy, in which now we have N.V. Banerjee, Philosophy of N.V. Banerjee, then Philosophy of Daya Krishna, Philosophy of J.N. Mohanty, Philosophy of Suresh Chandra, and Philosophy of Yashadev Shalya in Hindi. Now, certainly, I mean, all these kinds of things are there in the market, they are in the libraries, in the universities and colleges. But once again, this has not become part of our curriculum. You know, none of us we read. If I ask the question, please tell us something about N.V. Banerjee. No one knows. Then tell us something about Malkani. No one knows. Tell us something about Kalidas Bhattacharya. Maybe 5 or 10 people will know. So this is the situation. See, this is the problem which is happening. I mean, this is the problem of, so to say, contemporary Indian philosophy in India. That is one thing. Now, therefore, one thing is that this, and I go all along with Nirmal, that when we talk about contemporary Indian philosophy, we should also include the whole corpus of the writings of traditional Pandits, either in Bengali, now in Marathi I know recently, recently means in this sense, this Kashinath Shastri Abhyankar's Advait Amoda Siddhi, which he has written in Marathi, a commentary, and another is our Yadneshwar Shastri Kasture's commentary on Bhamati Prakash. So these works are also in other regional languages, such kinds of works are there.
Some work has been done.
Huh?
In
Yes, Hindi, yes.
Hindi.
Hindi I did not mention separately, but Marathi, Bengali, Malayalam, these lot of work has been done, and that actually creates this corpus of called contemporary Indian philosophy, which has to come. I mean, at least we should be aware. I wish that there should be some in syllabus in philosophy departments. There should be at least a part of a paper just to introduce what is gone into all this. No one knows anything about this. So that's the point that I wanted to make. Now, Nirmalya mentioned Ganeshwar Mishra. He interpreted Shankara in the light of Wittgenstein. But do you know that when Wittgenstein's Tractatus was published, then the first book on Tractatus was written by a non-European, a non-American, but it was written by an Indian called G.N. Mathrani. G.N. Mathrani was the first person ever, nothing was written on Tractatus even in England, but it was Mathrani. So, I have seen that book. I have also met Mr. Mathrani long ago. But you see, this is the kind of thing that Indians have contributed to this world of philosophy in a very significant way. But somehow that thing is not taken into account. I think these are the kinds of things that basically I wanted to know. And this creative writing, you see, look at all these names which I took, Banerjee and others. Now, what exactly is their contribution either to Indian philosophy or to philosophy as such? This also has to go. I mean, if someone takes an inspiration from these writings and comes out with that should be counted as this thing. So that was all I wanted to say on this occasion. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharada. Actually, we have the great fortune of having an extremely eminent philosopher in the audience, and I can't help but asking him if he would like to say a few words on this occasion. Professor Mark Sideritz, who is former professor of philosophy, Illinois State University and Seoul National University. Mark, if you would just say a few words of encouragement.
Being an analytic philosopher who takes language very seriously, I'm going to stick to your request and take it quite literally. You said a few words. I've said a few words. I'm done. No, I really must applaud this effort as someone who has, over the last 20 years, done absolutely horrible things to global warming because of all of the flying I've done from North America to East Asia to South Asia to Europe, back and forth constantly. And in addition to jet lag, there is the difficulty of figuring out exactly which books one takes with one when one is going off to spend a month in Kyoto or 3 months in Paris or whatever. You can't carry all the books that you need as a scholar, particularly a scholar working on classical Indian philosophy as I do. You can't carry all those books that you need, even if you have the privilege of being able to check 2 suitcases on your next flight. And so having these precious resources digitized, making them available to scholars all over the world, including the scholars who go around the world constantly, is a great, great boon. It's absolutely wonderful. So I'm delighted. I'm also, of course, delighted to know that the contributions of Bengali pundits and contemporary Indian philosophers are being made available on a much larger, much wider basis. So I congratulate you for these efforts. And now I've said more than a few words. So,
now I would like to request Nirmalo and Indadul and Dr. Indadul Islam Molla to give a brief demonstration of our digital library.
Indian philosophy, religion, etc. Okay, and then next page. So, then go to the next then. Okay. So about Darshan Manisha, there is a kind of introduction to the aims and objectives of this project, what we want to do. Okay, and so we have this is our project team. Okay, so next page. We don't have publications. Go to the categories. So as we were telling that we have 3 categories, right? One is Navadhyaya scholarship in Navadvip, and the second one is 20th century Pandits of Kolkata, and the third one is philosophers of modern India. So let's go to Navadhyaya scholarship of Navadvip. Okay, so how many books we have? Where is that list? So can we just open one that Kali Shankari Prodapatra? This is the one, Prodapatra. See, this is as any student of Navadhyaya philosophy knows that towards the end of the Navadhyaya scholarship we have this genre known as Prodapatras. They are not exhaustive long commentaries of the texts, but they are basically kind of articles on the difficult parts of the original text. So those are called Prodapatras. See, one such example is Kali Shankar Tarkavagish. He actually wrote hundreds of Prodapatras focusing on different arguments of the original Navadhyaya text. So we have this Prodapatra. And see what we have done on the right hand side. You see the kind of brief summary of the main contents of the book. Then we have the publication details, etc., etc. So can we go into the text now? Okay, so this is Prodapatra Sangraha, Kali Shankara Siddhanta Vagish. So see, it was published in 1921 from Banaras, Chowkhamba. So can we go to the next page? Next page. Okay, now so you have the text. Okay, Brahmanyavada Gadadhari Prodapatra. Okay. So the idea is, if we can develop an OCR of these kinds of Sanskrit texts, at some point we can have this history of ideas of this text. So can we go to the next page? That just as a sample. So this is one. And I don't think this. I don't know. Professor Sen might correct me. I don't think this is available in the market anymore. This Kalishan Kari, not at all. So now you see. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So okay. So this is one example of the Navadvip text of Navadvip. So can we go to the second? Yeah. Okay. See, Advaita Siddhi, the book that Professor Sen was referring to a little while ago, Advaita Siddhi by Yogendranath Tarkasankha Vedanta Tirtha. Can we go inside the book? Okay, so on the right hand side you see a very brief summary of the main content of the book and the details about the publication, etc. So let's go inside the book now.
Can I just add with Nirmal? The reason that we have the description is that we do not have the OCR yet, but if with the description itself serves as a kind of search tool for the scholar. So in absence of the OCR, if one types the keywords that occur in the metadata that we have created, then one gets to this book or some particular theme that this book addresses.
So let's go inside the book. Right. So next page. Next page. Let's go to the main text. Okay, so this is how the book starts. Yeah. So did you read the entire book? Okay. Can we have one more example from this genre other than Yogendranath? Just go down. Bhaktivedanta Darshan Shastra Samanvaya. This is an excellent book by Yogendranath which Professor Sen was referring to. Can we go inside the book, Bhaktivedanta Darshan Shastra Samanvaya? Okay. So similarly, on the right hand side, you have a brief summary of the main content of the book and the publication details. And then let's go inside the book. Yeah. Let's go. Next page. Next page. Yeah. So the book. You have the book here. Okay. So now let's go to the next genre. Contemporary Indian philosophy of modern India. This is not philosophy. Okay. Yeah. Let's go to say Bika Malli. I will give you an example.
There you are. If you want to proceed.
Where is Bika Malli? No. Or Nikunj Bihari Banerjee, which Professor Deshpande was referring to.
That's not Vasanth Kumar Maulik, Garland.
No, this is actually not his book, but this is in his memory. So let's go down. Okay, so that's a Nikunj Bihari. Is it Nikunj Bihari Banerjee? No.
Next page.
Or maybe Hiralal Haldar, whichever it is. Okay. See, this is Hiralal Haldar. Okay, fine. Please, can you open this? See, he is. He was a professor of philosophy at Calcutta University, and he was very highly regarded as a Hegelian scholar of that time. And his books were cited by very many Oxford philosophers when they were talking about Hegel. Unfortunately, his name has been forgotten now. So I have somehow collected his book, this Neo-Hegelian. Can we go inside the book? Yes. That's right. Yes. Yes. So since this is English, we can give you an example of how we can apply OCR in this book. So let's give one example of any word and see how can we find it in the book. Absolute, say, for example. So you are searching how the word absolute has been used by the author in this book and in which contexts. Okay, so this will give you a list. See, on the left side, you get all the statements, okay, where the word absolute has occurred in this book. Can we have the page number as well? Yeah, you have the page number as well. See? So this is exactly what we want to do with the Sanskrit verses. Can we have another example of from this genre?
Just another book.
Another book. Philosophy of Modern India.
Been entrusted with the job of delivering the vote of thanks. So I would like to share a small story with you. I think sometime 8 months or 9 months ago, I received a text message from Professor Shukanta Chaudhary saying that I've sent you an email, Madhuchanda. Would you please check it? I forwarded a mail from this gentleman, Dr. Shumanto Rudru, who is asking for help from our School of Cultural Text and Records in digitization of a journal that used to come out from Navadvip called Nodia Prakash. So I checked the email, and that is how we got to know Dr. Rudru. And Jadavpur University and the School of Cultural Text and Records are now negotiating with Bhaktivedanta Research Center for the digitization of this journal, Nodia Prakash. And this is how we got to know Dr. Rudru. And we shared our dream of building up a digital library. And to our great delight, Dr. Rudru and Bhaktivedanta Research Center came forward and helped us to start working on this digital library. So the first thanks goes to Professor Shukanta Chaudhary. Shukanta is not here today in Kolkata, otherwise he would have been here. And of course to Bhaktivedanta Research Center. But now I'm sort of a part of it, so I mean it makes it sounds a little funny to thank oneself. I would like to thank Professor Jonathan Ganelli, Professor Prabal Kumar Sen, Professor Sharad Deshpande and Professor Siddharith for being with us and sharing their thoughts with us today. I would like to thank the BRC team in Kolkata who has worked tirelessly with the able leadership of Dr. Rudru. In particular, I would like to thank Dr. Imdadul Islam Molla, who has been the research assistant of Darshan Manisha project, and all the metadata that you see here are painstaking work of Imdadul and Nirmallo. I would like to thank Sundar Gopal Prabhuji here, and Vijush and Raju, and Balaram Leela Prabhu of VRC. I would like to thank AU Solutions Bangalore, who have actually constructed the digital library. They have looked after the technical side of, actually they have made the library what it is. So in particular I would like to thank Vishwatma Gopinath Prabhu of AU Solutions. I would also like to thank Rajbi of BRC, who has helped us in more than one ways. I would also take the opportunity to make a humble appeal to the audience here to not only encourage us but also contribute to this digital library by lending us their private collection so that we can enrich our library by them. And I'm really happy to see so many students from more than 2 universities here, some from philosophy and some also from other disciplines who have gathered here. So I thank you all for being here, and I thank the audience for coming here, being with us and encouraging us. I would ask you to join us for a small refreshment outside. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.